All right, so let's talk about the best offenses in football. So I'm going to be ranking every offense 1 through 32 using the system that I've already used. It's sort of taking into account how much positional value matters, using data based on use Pro Football Focus grades and seeing how often does being good at a certain trait mean that you'll be good at your entire offense, and sort of, plugged every team in. I've explained this 1,000 times, and I'm still not good at explaining it. But anyways, let's just jump into the graph here. So we'll start off with the bottom 8 teams right here. So the Jets, worst offense in football. The only category where they have wins added is with their rookie quarterback, which, I love Zach Wilson. There are some questions just about how much will he impact them right away. Obviously, I think in the future he should be incredible, but it's one season. So rookies tend to take some time to develop. You have the Texans at 31. They got some wins with their offensive line, some wins with their wide receiving core, nothing with their quarterback because I do not have Deshaun Watson playing for them, and nothing with their halfback. So, sub 2 wins there as well. And also, you're going to notice if you watch the defensive video that I either have put out or will put out, you're going to notice a lot more wins to be had in offense. Offense is where NFL games are won in today's NFL. Number 30, you have the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, they get a win with a tier 4 quarterback there and a little bit more with an okay offensive line. I believe that's tier 3. So, not a ton there, but at least there's something. The Dolphins, all of their wins comes with receiving core. Some people would have Tua as a tier 4. I have him as tier 5, but he definitely has potential to go up to tier 4 or even 3 or 2. Number 28, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do have Lawrence as a tier 4 guy right now. They get some wins with their halfback, although you'll notice halfbacks have, either not a lot of wins or they'll be like a 2.5 win thing. That's if you have a tier 1. Tier 1 is what matters with halfbacks. And then you have, some wins there with offensive line and wide receiver. They're the lowest on the board who has wins added at every single category. The Bears are actually lower than them. I screwed that up somehow. So we'll just keep going with it. But yeah, the Bears should be 28. Jaguars should be 27. Math maybe not my strong suit here. But Bears, they have wins pretty much everywhere except for the quarterback position. A little bit better receiving core I have them as, just because Allen Robinson's awesome. 26, the Giants, horrible offensive line, but they do have, I gave them a win with Daniel Jones. I could easily be talked out of that and could give it to Tua, but as of right now, I do have them as a tier 4 quarterback room. Solid receiving core, like the receiving core. And again, I had Barkley as a tier 2 running back. He was almost tier 1. Not quite there. If he is, you're adding an extra 2 wins to that total, but that's where I have them. And then 26, the Panthers. They do get that 2.5 wins with the halfback position, but I don't have them as any wins with Sam Darnold. Their offensive line, not great outside of Taylor Motton. And then, again, solid receiving core, but that's really all they have offensively right now. And again, good coaching, so I'm sure they'll get more wins than the 4.31 I have them projected as, but that's just because they'll coach more, not because their talent is better. Number 24, so this is the next tier, obviously. I have the New England Patriots, who I have them, 4.35, so just, 0.04 wins ahead of the Panthers. Mac Jones, he gets a win there. They have some solid stuff across the board. Good offensive line, very good offensive line, and outside of that, it's fine across the board. The Lions, like their quarterback enough with Jared Goff. He's tier 2 to me. That does help them out a lot. Good offensive line I have them as, although, Sewell's had his troubles in the preseason. Hopefully that gets cleared up. Not a lot of work in the wide receiving core, though. That's why they're still a bit lower. Meanwhile, the Steelers, very different. Still a tier 3 quarterback, but, their wins are really coming with the wide receiving room. Not much going into offensive line. And then the Broncos, another interesting team where they have a lot of wins around this team. It's just the quarterback position, nothing there. I mean, there's a 0 through 4.09 stretch you can get with the quarterback. So you're missing out on 4 wins by having a tier 5 quarterback. You want to get that better. That's real wins to be had there for Denver. For the Colts, you have a team that, not much receiving going, but everything else I like about their offense, so that's kind of why they're in the mediocre range, where I don't love a ton. I like that's not true. I love their offensive line, but other than that, there's not a ton to love except for, Wentz is fine, and they could really use some improvement in the wide receiving core. The Atlanta Falcons are the lowest that any team with a tier 2 quarterback are. They don't have any wins with their halfback because, tier 4 or tier 5 gets you 0 wins. Also, with their wide receiving core, I like Calvin Ridley a lot, but it is pretty much just Calvin Ridley and a rookie Kyle Pitts going there because, again, wide receiver, it says wide receiver, it's actually wide receiver / tight end. It's receiving room. That's how I would phrase it. And an offensive line, not horrible, but not the best either. But again, Matt Ryan, I still think is very good, very underrated. The Cardinals, I have Kyler as a tier 3 quarterback, which I think is fair, even though I think some people will fight me on it. Their wide receiving core, it's really DeAndre Hopkins. That's what it is. But again, DeAndre Hopkins is awesome, so there's wins there. And then the Cardinals, good offensive line, not elite, but very good. So that's where they're at. And then the Bengals, I have as the 17th best offense in football. It's, Joe Burrow I like their wide receiving core. Offensive line could use some work, but Joe Mixon gets them some wins with the halfback room, so that's why they're where they're at. All right, number 16, the New Orleans Saints are here. It's largely due to Alvin Kamara. Winston gets them a win at the quarterback position, and they have a good offensive line, a tier 1 offensive line, and tier 1 halfback room. Nothing with their wide receivers. They are the best team with a tier 5 wide receiving core. Number 15, the Raiders were, some people fought me on having them as tier 4 receiving core, but there's just a lot of good receiving cores out there. The rest of their team, pretty great. I mean, Derek Carr, I have as a tier 2 quarterback, good offensive line, solid halfback room. It's just, some wins could be added with their receiving core for sure. The Chargers here, Chargers and Washington are tied. In fact, they're tied across the board. Every category is tied, which is, unique. They have a lot of tier 3s here is how this works. So they're complete offenses, but they, they have some room for improvement in certain areas, but there's no hole either with them. And then you go to the Baltimore Ravens, where they get no wins with their halfback room, but they have Lamar Jackson, who I have as tier 1. So they are the worst offense with a tier 1 quarterback. But they just don't have much going receiving. Their offensive line's good, but, really the receiving core is where they really struggle. And it really cost them at times last year having a poor receiving room. Everyone blames Lamar Jackson, but look who he's throwing to. Who would have success with that receiving core? Although, adding Sammy Watkins, adding Rashad Bateman, that should help things a lot. Number 11, I have the 49ers here. So again, the best part about this team is their wide receiving core, tier 2 quarterback, and then good offensive line. You don't need to have the best halfback room, but what's also interesting is with Kyle Shanahan, he could just add a couple of wins there, giving them a tier 1 running game, even without the tier 1 running game talent. So that's an interesting little asterisk thing here to put on that. Buffalo Bills, now worth mentioning, yes, I have Josh Allen as tier 2. I know a lot of people would have him as tier 1. He was number 6. I can only have 5 guys. He was the odd man out. It's him or Lamar, whoever you want to put there. If you think Allen should be there, that's fine. We don't have to argue. Just, in your head, say, okay, there's an extra, 1.23 wins to add to the Buffalo Bills offense. But their receiving core, very good. Tier 2 receiving core on top of this. Good offensive line as well. So that's where they're at. And the Rams, again, they're similar with the Bills in terms of their quarterback. I still have that as tier 2. Wide receiving core, a little bit worse. Offensive line, a little bit better. And then the halfback, I put it here when they had Cam Akers. Might have fallen off to 0 without Cam Akers, because in halfbacks, there's only three wins you can get. It's either 0, 0.63, or 2.5. And 2.5, only 5 teams get. So Rams do have over 7 wins, but that could have dropped off with the Akers injury. All right, top 8 now. So the Green Bay Packers, who were the best offense in football last year, I do have as the 8th best offense this year, which I know people will be mad about. That's okay. You're allowed to be. The receiving core is really where things get tricky. And one asterisk I guess I should put on this whole list is, if you're a tier 5 quarterback, I just have you as the same as, the first is the same as the 5th. right? You're all tier 1. But obviously, that's not exactly how it works. Aaron Rodgers was significantly better than, the 5th best quarterback in the NFL last year. So that could kind of explain how, even though they have relatively the same team, they probably got more than just 7.67 wins out of their offense last year because Rodgers gave them more wins. And if he plays on that level again, he could do the same thing. Number 7, the Seattle Seahawks. Again, tier 1 quarterbacks. You're going to see a lot of tier 1 quarterbacks or tier 1 receiving cores. In fact, there's only one team that doesn't have a tier 1 quarterback or tier 1 receiving core. They're, interestingly enough, the number 1 team, but we'll get into that in a second. Seattle, tier 2 receiving core, tier 1 offense, tier 1 quarterback. That's going to get you a lot of wins. It's 8.26 for them. They do have some wins with the halfback and O-line as well. The Cowboys have a tier 1 receiving core. They have a tier 2 quarterback. So again, that stuff helps. Not to mention tier 2 offensive line and some wins in the halfback room as well. The Vikings are an interesting team. I have them as a top 5 offense. Where you're ranking the top 5 offenses. I think they're a team that many people would leave out, but I still have them here. While Kirk Cousins is a tier 3 quarterback, in my opinion, they have that great halfback room, and if you can have that, it can really make things work, especially with their incredible tier 1 receiving core as well, and an okay offensive line, not fantastic, but there's some value there. It's at least not tier 5. And so, which is kind of really what you need. So that is why I have them here. Although, again, another asterisk is I don't know how well I trust this coaching staff to get the most out of this offense. So it might not actually perform as well as they probably should. Number 4, the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, tier 1 wide receiver, tier 2 quarterback. So even with no wins with their halfback, they also have a tier 2 offensive line, though. So this is a loaded team. It's just the halfback. That's where they're not getting any wins from. And, same thing with the Buccaneers, where they actually have tier 1 offensive line, tier 1 wide receiving core, tier 1 quarterback play, but with no wins at their halfback, they're stuck at 9.4 wins with their offense alone, which is still crazy to think about. The top 2 teams are 2 teams with tier 1 halfback play. You have the Cleveland Browns, who also have tier 1 wide receiver play and tier 1 offensive line play. They just have tier 3 quarterback play, in my opinion, with Baker, whereas the Titans, even though they have tier 2 offensive line play, tier 2 wide receiving core play, they have tier 2 quarterback play as well, and that makes up the difference to give them 0.1 wins higher than Cleveland. So those are 2 loaded teams, which they have a lot of talent, and teams are going to try and play zone and stop the run, which will make things very easy for these great passing attacks to work. So, yeah. That's my list, 1 through 32. Let me know in the comments below. Why am I stupid? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.